And there is the green jersey, Peter Sagan, alongside Chris Froome, the overall race leader. They roll away. This moment, they all look relatively relaxed, but Nairo Quintana sitting towards the front. Surely the pressure is building internally for Nairo Quintana. Everybody has been expecting the attacks to come from the great Colombian climber, but he's yet to deliver any major punch. He hasn't really landed anything on the chin of Chris Froome.
Not yet, but at this point in the race last year, he also hadn't landed anything on the chin of Chris Froome. It all happened in that last couple of days. We're still a week away from Paris, but now is when it's got to start happening, because Nairo Quintana, he knows last year he probably started risking it a little bit too late, making those big attacks and finally taking time. Had he started a little bit earlier, he may have been able to crack Chris Froome. But I wonder if his confidence is up to it, because he tried on the Mont Ventoux and he got dropped.
He said he made a mistake and he went too soon. Thomas de Gendt in the King of the Mountains jersey. He must go in the breakaway today. He must.
And he's starting on the front row because he's wearing that jersey. And even if he was second in that competition, I'm sure he'd be starting on the front row, or at least right tucked in behind it, ready to go again. And he knows that if he can get in the break today and Rafael Maker doesn't, he could effectively wrap up the King of the Mountains jersey on today's stage. There are so many climbs on offer. But he says, you know what? I want to have a man-against-man battle with Maker. I'm happy if he tries to go up the road, because I'll go too. I'd like to race for it.
What's happening here with Chris Froome? He's just gone a little bit further forward. Might be trying to get to the left-hand side of the road to adjust some sort of mechanical problem.
He's on the radio. Seems to be having a bit of computer trouble. Might have to dial a geek.
And hopefully he's got that all sorted out. Here's Geraint Thomas towards the front for Team Sky. He will be so valuable today, Geraint Thomas.
It's one of those stages where it's quite possible that Chris Froome will need to use up every single resource he's got. Every teammate, Thomas, and now even early on, Rowan Stannard, to try and control the attacks, make sure nobody dangerous on general classification slips into a breakaway. But Rowan Stannard, I think we'll find them pretty quickly dropped on a stage like this. All depends on how aggressive it is right from the start and who gets into the moves and how quickly it calms at the peloton. And here's a smiling face at the front of Mark Cavendish. And lucky he passed maths at school, because almost need a degree to count up as high as he needs to count the stage wins he's amassed in the Tour de France. 30. Okay, making it sound more complicated than it is maybe, but let's just say that's a lot of wins. That's a lot of victory salutes.
Well, he's run out of fingers and toes to count with, so he's had to go in multiples of 10s now. It is extraordinary. 184 starters on the grid today in Bourg-en-Bresse. 185 riders finished yesterday, but Jens de Boucher, the Belgian rider from Lotto Soudal, as we see one of his teammates, Marcus Seberg, come to the front, he crashed heavily with Matty Breschel, who abandoned the race. But Jens made it to the finish, but he hasn't made it to the start today.
No, and he's got a fractured shoulder blade is the diagnosis, and a deep cut on his knee as well. So the Belgian is out of the race, but just a sign of how tough these guys are. Got back on, finished the stage with a fractured shoulder blade, a deep cut right on his knee.
I love this map of France, and the yellow, the Jura, that's where we are right now.
And also down in the corner there, Nice. And of course, here in France, officially 3 days of mourning in the country, and a lot of support going out to the city of Nice and the people of Nice.
And stretching to have a look to see if he can spot it. That was Fabio Sabatini from the edX Quick-Step team. Did the lead-out job yesterday for Marcel Kittel, who had to settle for minor placing, and he was understandably disappointed. More on that in a moment. Who goes first? Luke Rowe, the policeman at the front for Team Sky. The tour director, Christian Prudhomme, is just about ready to take the flag away and let racing get started. race is officially underway. The flag is in and everybody's calm for now. But for how long? Andre Greipel yesterday celebrating his 34th birthday. He moves to the front in the white colours as the German national champion. Not sure that Andre Greipel was overly concerned about the fact that it was his birthday yesterday and he missed out. More concerned about the fact that he just missed out. This is Grommet, who gets the honour of being the first to attack on stage 15. Burkhardt responds quickly. Next in line is Julien Vermont. And then, as expected, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, Thomas de Gendt, is right in the thick of it and responding to come across Peter Sagan.
Expected no less from Peter Sagan. When there's an attack, he's going to just go with it because that's just what he does. The intermediate sprint today comes after 71.5 kilometres of racing and after category 1, 2 and 3 climbs. So a pretty tough ask for any sprinter to get to that intermediate sprint and take points. But if there's one man that can, it's the man in green.
This is the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, winning the stage to Mont Ventoux. Thomas de Gendt, he's going to become the answer to a trivia question. Who won the day that Chris Froome ran? But as you mentioned yesterday, he won't care about that. He just knows that he won, and it was Mont Ventoux.
And that's all that really matters to Thomas de Gendt. And what also matters to him is that polka dot jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains competition. And the best defence is attack, according to Thomas de Gendt. But they're not just letting them go. Long, long line forming at the front. And I'm just wondering where Raphael Maker is at this moment, watching de Gendt ride up the road. If he wants to challenge for that competition, he needs to be with him today.
And given that Alberto Contador is no longer here, he will get the green light to do whatever he wants. And the team owner, Oleg Tinkov, he wants the green jersey, which they've got a strong grip on at the moment, but he also wants the King of the Mountains jersey. Julien Vermont is the rider from edX Quickstep who has joined Thomas de Gendt at the front. There's not much wind at all today as we're into the Jura. It's fairly calm.
That's Stettiner trying to come across. You said you expected him in the break. He just had a dig going through that roundabout. Still can't quite get himself off the front of that peloton. It was one of the Orica Bike Exchange riders. I think it was Ruben Plaza. Track him or Daryl Impey?
Christopher Yule Jensen.
You think?
Is my tip.
All right.
The Irish-born Dane, who's been pretty quiet so far, but this is a stage where he can play his role. You're pointing to the screen and you're pointing to Steve Cummings in the white colours. Go on.
Off the front or on the back, one of the two. And as guys start to get dropped, I'm sure he'll just still be in last position of the peloton as others go out. He'll just keep filling that gap, just keep riding around people. As these two riders, they are holding that chasing group at bay at the moment. As a little group has got itself just off the front of the peloton. We see from the helicopter shot, they've got about 50 metres. That chase group must be about 10 or 12 riders trying to get across to Thomas de Gendt and Julien Vermont.
Which would be the perfect size group for a stage like this. Virtually the same size group that they had on the stage to Mont Ventoux, and very similar to the size of the group that we saw to Andorra when it was Tom Dumoulin that won the stage. So you can't get away with a group of just 2 or 4 or even 5. You need 10 plus, 10 to 15 on a stage like this to stand any chance of surviving. And you need a group that doesn't have any big favourite for a spot inside the top 10. Peter Sagan it is in the green jersey who closes it down. And there has been a big response from the peloton. This is Brice Filou now in the black colours from Fortunato Vital Concept.
And it looks like Thomas de Gendt's move is going to be in vain because everything is coming back together, albeit in a almost fracturing single file line.
Yesterday's stage winner, Mark Cavendish, the debate still rages. Is he going to go all the way to Paris or is he going to pull the pin with the view of the Olympic Games? His team director, Roger Hammond, has said, we're focusing on trying to get him to Paris because there's 2 more stages that he can win.
I spoke to him last night. Last night I was a guest on a Belgian talk show, an evening Tour de France show called Vive le Vélo, and they interviewed Mark Cavendish on location at his hotel, and I got to ask him a couple of questions as well. And we talked about the possibility of pulling out of the Tour de France. He said, I'm not thinking about pulling out of the Tour de France. I'm thinking about Paris, and I'd love to win there again. And some people say maybe it's a better preparation to pull out and start doing some track training. He said, but I feel good. if I was to get sick, if I was to get overly tired and really struggle, I may consider it. But at the moment, I feel good. I'm going to stay. That's the plan.
This is Greg Henderson at the back of the peloton for Lotto Soudal. Tough day for the Kiwi. Greg Henderson, he's had a tough couple of years with lots of injuries throughout the off-season, which has postponed his preparation for this year. And it looks as if this might be his last Tour de France. There's no confirmation of him going on next year, and there's been that talk of his retirement. Whatever the outcome is at the end of the year, he's had a brilliant career, Greg Henderson. A career that he had to fight for, but he got there. And he's been a stage winner at the Tour of Spain.
Always been an incredibly hard worker, Greg Henderson. Very focused and been an integral part of a lot of riders' wins over the years in the professional teams he's ridden for. He's ridden with Mark Cavendish, but mostly in service of Andre Greipel over the last 6 or 7 years. Done a great job as the lead-out man for the big German champion.
Sylvain Chavanel now finds himself at the front. Ilnaz Zakarin is the rider who's behind him in the red colours. And Peter Sagan, ever attentive at the front, just taking a look over the shoulder, seeing if there's anybody else prepared to make a move. Katusha have clearly got a plan. They've fallen short with their sprinter. That was yesterday with Alexander Kristoff. Hoping today with Joaquim Rodriguez. Chavanel now decides it's time to go. The first climb itself is only 6 kilometres long, and that tops out when they're at the point of having covered 23 Ks, so with 137 Ks to go. But there's a few lumps before they actually get there. And it's quite a steep climb once they're onto it, 8%. This one home for Lotto Soudal. Well, not quite drive it home, but split it open. He's looking to make the most of the little gap that they've got on the main field. And they're still 2 kilometres away from officially starting the first climb of the day.
This is the second hill of the stage, and it was a hill that went up, very short descent, and then kicked up again before a sharp little descent to the foot of the first climb, the Category 1. Tony Galopin running out of time to build much of a buffer before they get onto that Category 1 climb.
Once they get onto that climb, it's 2.3 kilometres until they get to the bottom of the climb. Team Sky would really want things to start to settle down.
So would the sprinters.
All be hoping that a break that is containable gets established. This is the first group that is now losing contact, and Lee Howard in the white colours is amongst them.
Well, Galopin, he is opening up the gap. 2 riders trying to come across. Navadauskas is one of those, an AG2R rider, but behind them there was still more reaction coming from the peloton. So Tony Galopin, the only one so far to get a gap to speak of in this stage, but I'm sure he'd rather be out there with a few riders rather than just on his own.
He has been a stage winner in the past. He's had a brief stint in the yellow jersey. And we've seen a fair bit of his uncle, Alain Galopin, in the team car as one of the sports directors for Trek Segafredo. And today their big hopes rest with Bauke Mollema, who very quickly is becoming the closest challenger, the real rival. Strong on the stage to Mont Ventoux, Bauke Mollema. He bridged across to Froome and Port.
And he was also the fastest to get himself up off the ground, grab his bike and keep moving towards the finish line, bike and all, as opposed to Chris Froome, who was wearing out his cleats, and I'm sure they bolted on a new set for the next day after that couple of 100 metres on foot. Is Galopin still eking out that gap, and those 2 riders starting to get a small gap over the peloton?
We're heading towards the Swiss border, and we're in the Jura Mountains at the moment, in the department of the Ain. And this is the beautiful river that runs some 200 kilometres, and it's got its source back in the Burgundy region. Looks absolutely stunning. So too does the road alongside it. Beautiful roads these for cyclo-touring as well, not to race, just to go and enjoy riding. And once we get to the Grand Colombier and then the Lassettes to the Grand Colombier, the last 2 climbs of today's stage, you're going to see Mother Nature at its very best. The switchbacks on that final climb are breathtaking.
And that's exactly what Lassettes means. All those hairpin turns. Remember, last year the riders tackled the Lassettes de Montvernier with its 18 hairpins in 3.4 kilometres. Maybe not quite as many hairpins on the Lasset de Colombier, but certainly spectacular in its own right.
A little tough at the back of the peloton.
Tony Martin across on the right-hand side there, number 185 in the blue from Ethics Quickstep. Thomas de Gent, well, he has met his match so far, trying to get in the break, but now it's a teammate, Tony Galopin, who is off the front. So de Gent decided to roll the dice right from kilometre zero, try and get a gap before they hit the first big climb, but now down the back and not in a position now to get himself into the break unless he has a very swift recovery.
He's paying the price for being so aggressive so soon.
Navadauskas also dropping back on the right-hand side in that white jersey of the Lithuanian champion. Tony Galopin fighting to get this gap, but the peloton not prepared to let anybody ride off on their own. Too many riders trying to get themselves in the break, jump across, and just stretching out of the front. I spotted Serge Paul is at the front there from Dimension Data, second on the Mont Ventoux stage.
This is Reinhard Janzi van Rensburg at the back. One of the riders who was supporting Mark Cavendish yesterday. Lars Bak is slipping the wrong direction. De Gent in trouble in the polka dot jersey. Yesterday's birthday boy is there, Andre Greipel. This is where they need to get themselves organised, as the former winner of the race, Vincenzo Nibali, is now coming through to the front. Alberto Lasada is the rider behind him in the red colours from Katusha.
We spoke about it just before. What should Nibali be doing in this race? Should he be staying with Aru? And I said it, Vincenzo Nibali should be able to decide for himself what he thinks is best tactically, and also for he himself. And honestly, back in the bunch, there's not much he can do there for Fabio Aru, particularly in the first 3/4 of the stage. Why not get in the break? And he thinks exactly that.
Vincenzo Nibali, followed by Serge Pauls. It is then Alexei Villimos. Alberto Lasada is next in line from Katusha. They've now officially started the climb. 6 kilometres to the top. Serge Pauls second on the stage to Mont Ventoux behind Thomas de Gent. He's recovered a little bit better than the leader of the King of the Mountains classification. Villimos, a stage winner last year to the Mur de Bretagne. And two riders getting in the thick of it from Katusha. The other one that was up there in the red was Ilnar Zakarin.
And another man in red I saw, I think that was Danny Navarro, third on the stage to Chalet Renard on the Mont Ventoux. He was in the break there with de Gent and Poles. Katusha very present at the front of the peloton. Zakarin in the break, and his teammate right on the front. That is Zakarin on the front of the peloton, in fact. As Villemos drives the pace with Poles and Nibali in his wheel.
Crunch time for this group to get away. FDJ coming across. Surely that is Sebastian Reichenbach, as the reaction is coming from Rafael Majka, who's trying to bridge across.
He has bided his time. He has not been lured out by Thomas de Gent early on the stage. Majka running second in the King of the Mountains competition. And now he said, I'm going to wait till it's the real deal, and then I'm going to go. Majka, he's the man who will make this break work. If he's got any chance, Majka is the one who's got to go to the front and try and split them away from the peloton. That's where he's going to pick up his points. That's where he can win the King of the Mountains today.
A big move, Rafael Majka, as we look at this viaduct that was built in 1872. And it was a strategic point throughout the Second World War, but it was blasted away on the 12th of July 1944, and it took 2 years to rebuild it. It is part of the TGV line, but they've got to slow down to go across it to just somewhere between 80 and 120 kilometres per hour. Tony Martin going out the back, so too Robbie Wagner, the former German national champion. Life is tough at the back. This is Borat Bozic now from Cofidis. Adashiro from the Lamprey team, the German national champion. Meanwhile, at the front, it's the Polish national champion, followed by the climbing Villimos. Very good climber, Alexei Villimos. Formerly a very good mountain bike rider.
a good, handy climber, not a pure climber. We saw his explosive climbing power on the Mur de Bretagne last year, where he jumped away from the peloton and won solo. So Andre Greipel, he's almost at sprint intensity, just trying to make sure he gets into that group. The gruppetto, here's Mark Cavendish. So really starting to form now the usual suspects off the back on the first climb of the day. They'll all get together and just set their pace, make sure they're inside the time limit.
Well, these are the days that stand between Mark Cavendish making it onto the Champs-Élysées and trying to win there again, as he did in 2012.
Lee Howard, Bernard Eisel. So the gruppetto forming really quite quickly. It's over the first couple of weeks in the mountain stages that there's a bit more of a fight. It takes a lot longer for that gruppetto to form. Get into the last week of the tour, it happens a lot quicker. Everybody knows the drill. They know it's getting too hard, get together. And they haven't got much choice. It just happens naturally. It's just physical. It's not what they want. It's just what happens to them.
It is because it is. Rafael Majka.
As is this. We've seen him on the attack in the mountains so many times over the past few seasons in the Tour de France, winning mountain stages, winning the mountains jersey, and that what he has his mind on today, taking it back from Thomas de Gent.
This is Michael Albacini from the Orica Bike Exchange team. He wants to fight to protect the white jersey of Adam Yates.
I still saw a green jersey in that peloton as well. Peter Sagan getting over the first Category 1 climb with the peloton.
Lots of Colombians on the side of the road. They're hoping for some big attacks this afternoon from Nairo Quintana. It needs no conversation, just the nod of their head. That's the international for we're a team for now.
And the pole just making sure the Russian knows what he expects of him over the top of this climb.
This is Steph Clement now, who's come to the front for IM Cycling, followed by Serge Pales. It's then Vincenzo Nibali. This is the second group on the road, and it is an enormous group. George Bennett is down towards the back of that group, I think, from the Lotto NL Jumbo team. Roman Sikar is certainly here from Direct Energy. So too Jerome Capel. Thomas Vockler at the back. And now Vincenzo Nibali. He knows this group is too big, so he's trying to bid across to the 2 leaders.
I was just going to say, when I saw Nibali looking around, he knows he needs to get away because this is too big a group, and he's at least going to have to split it on the descent to try and go across to these two. But he's not even waiting for that.
And if anybody can split it on the descent, it is Vincenzo Nibali. 10 points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey for Rafael Majka. He's still in second position, but he's now just 3 behind Thomas de Gent. Vincenzo Nibali. Serge Pales he knows exactly whose wheel he wants to follow.
And Pales going out to pick up a few points for the King of the Mountain as well. So he wants to finish high up in that competition. And he's not totally off the pace either.
He's in 6th position at the start of the day and 50 points behind. Vincenzo's not worried about King of the Mountains points. He goes again.
And he is attacking that downhill.
The green jersey, Peter Sagan, is also trying to go away.
And another specialist of, well, apart from everything, downhills in particular. And Sagan, he will leave this peloton because they won't take risks with Chris Froome, Team Sky. They will be controlled in the downhill. Peter Sagan, he will rail every corner. Remember last year's descent into Gap, where he was chasing down Ruben Plaza, who ended up winning the stage. That's the sort of thing that Peter Sagan will be putting out on the road to get himself across to the break and think about taking some more points after 71 kilometres at the intermediate sprint as we look at the Mont Blanc.
Off in the distance, stage 19 goes to the base of Mont Blanc. An indication that there is lots of climbing still to come, and everybody in the race is delighted that there's no road to the top of that enormous mountain.
Yeah, a little bit high at about 4,800 metres above sea level. Just over halfway up Everest.
Rafael Majka and Ilnaz Zakarin at the front. Well, that's one done. 5 more significant climbs to go. For the sprinters, you've said this before, sometimes it's not one day at a time, sometimes it's just one climb at a time.
And don't look up. Looking at this descent, it looks a bit too open and flowing for the likes of Vincenzo Nibali. He needs it more technical so he can really take risks in the corners to get away from the rest of the group. You see the corners are really quite open, a pedalling descent. So he's going to have to do it on brute strength. A couple of corners maybe lower down that he can just open that gap. But all the rest of this group, they know exactly what he's trying to do. They're also putting the risks out to stay with a guy like Nibali.
He's got Julian Alaphilippe behind him from the NX Quickstep team, who's had a significant impact on the race for a first-timer. A long stint in the white jersey.
He had a significant impact in the time trial for anybody who went and looked at that photo online when he came off and was flying through the air. Quite an incredible photo. When you see the photo, you would not believe that he'd still be in the race.
Meters per hour for the chasers.
And it's not even that steep on the downhill.
We saw, I can't remember what stage it was, Lee Howard posted his SRM machine to show his maximum speed for the day of 122 kilometres per hour.
Frightening.
You can't afford to make any mistakes at those sorts of speeds.
It'll be the last mistake you ever made.
Sadly, that would be true. Across the top of the climb. This lake Natura, which is 2.7 kilometres long and 650 metres wide. Another beautiful lake in this region, and there's plenty of them throughout today's stage. Rafael Majka and Ilnar Zakarin have now been caught by the Vincenzo Nibali group. So that big difference in speed has been enough for Vincenzo to return to the front. No great concerns at this point, at least, for the Sky Squad. Pierre Roland, he sits in 18th position overall at 15 minutes and 6 seconds down. Part of the breakaway group. This is Haimar Zubeldia at the rear of the breakaway. 26th overall at 32 minutes behind. Of the Izagirre brothers that have managed to make the move, it's Jon Izagirre that is in the break for Movistar. Danny Navarro, third on the stage to Mont Ventoux. George Bennett in the break. Julian Alaphilippe stretching everything, doing yoga on the bike. Ruben Platzer is the rider that's just in front of Alaphilippe, and he will not contribute to the pacemaking in this group, Ruben Platzer. He'll spend the whole day sitting on. He is waiting to be in a position to support Adam Yates.
And that's just what this man at the back will be doing as well. Haimar Zubeldia, the Spaniard from Team Trek Segafredo. He'll be thinking about Bauke Mollema and what he can do for him. So it's not about Zubeldia, it's about the team, it's about their GC hope. And he's sitting second overall at the moment, Mollema, after a fantastic career best time trial in the Ardèche a couple of days ago.
And he said that he spent a lot of time on his time trial bike this year. Dan Martin, in contrast, said that, well, he lost a bit of time in the time trial. He expected to, and he hasn't ridden his time trial bike at all, really, this year. Dan Martin was 33rd on the stage. Bauke Mollema was 6th. And Dan Martin lost a big chunk of time, and he really paid the price for not focusing on the individual time trial. But he said all his attention has been on the mountains. Let's see if that works out for him.
Talking of the mountains and the mountains competition, that's going to be a big focus of this stage until the GC riders really start to battle it out and hopefully for us attack each other. That classification, De Gent was leading with 13 points advantage. That's now down to just 3 points over Rafael Majka. But also in the break today, Navarro, Dumoulin and Serge Pauls. And Pauls was 50 points behind the lead, so he was 37 behind Majka. He's now given a few more away. But all those riders can think about possibly winning that competition because it's not finished today. There's another few Alpine stages to come yet.
It's a long way from being finished. 59 points up for grabs today if you collect all of them. And Rafael Majka is the only one that can do so, having won the first of the climbs. The team cars now going forward. The peloton strung out in not quite single file. The cars will be heavy on the horns to let the riders know that they're making their way past. Safety is the absolute priority. The helicopters down in the field, the VIP helicopters that get to go and follow the race. The best way you could possibly hope to do so. The only better way to follow the race than being in one of those helicopters is on the back of a motorbike. and then you're really in amongst it. There's a few of the journalists that cover the race, former riders, that get to go on the back of a motorbike and they commentate from actually out on the course, which you do each year at the Kid Evans Great Ocean Road Race. As a former rider, to be on the motorbike watching it all unfold, you feel like getting in amongst it?
It's a lot of fun. I don't feel like getting in amongst it, because one thing I really don't like to see is motorbikes too amongst it. It doesn't give me the feeling that I want to be there on the bike and racing them, but it is really good to see it up close like that. But I honestly would like to see less motorbikes in and around the peloton. We saw it the other day on the Mont Ventoux. That one motorbike that Richie Porte hit, well, he wasn't the only part of the problem. It was the 3 motorbikes in front of him. Too many. And they really need to narrow that down. But quite a convoy that was moving past the peloton, because 30 riders in the breakaway. And the only team I've identified that so far, I'll do a little bit more searching, but the only team not in it are Team Sky, all rallying around Chris Froome. As for the rest, I think every other team has someone in the break.
BMC. They're missing. Their strategy today. Their strategy today, your thoughts?
Well, I saw early on a couple of BMC riders trying to get amongst the break, but of course unable to on that Category 1 climb. If they didn't have anybody capable of getting in the break, that doesn't say a lot about the depth of the team in strength at the moment. Of course, they would have been saving their very best guys. Porte, Van Garderen, they're obviously not going to go. And maybe their best lieutenants also not. But the rest of the team was struggling, few off the back, and the rest unable to get in the break.
As they're making their way along the Valley Road, heading towards the next climb, which is the Col de Sapel. It's a Category 2 climb. Let's do what we usually do around about this time of the broadcast and go inside the peloton. The sprint finish yesterday, when we saw the helicopter shot, there was lots of rubbing of shoulders. We saw Peter Sagan and Brian Cockar rub shoulders. Dan McClay was heavily up against the barriers at one point. It was a frenetic sprint. I'm not sure the onboard cameras really have managed to do it justice. Almost at the top of the climb. Just 400 metres to go. Thomas Voeckler stretching the legs. It's then Steve Morabito, but the man with the most to gain is from Tinkoff, and that's Rafael Majka. Just behind him is Serge Pales, who's already shown his interest in the King of the Mountains jersey. The Direct Energy fan club on the side of the road for Thomas Voeckler. They'll be happy to see him in the breakaway. We need to get the camera to return to the front to see what's happening in the race for points. Surely it will be Rafael Majka who collects some more. This is Pierre Rolland, who the French are focusing on. Tom Dumoulin at the back of the group in the white colours from Giant Alpecin, just making sure he doesn't waste any energy. These riders will be able to return on the descent as the pace heats up in the battle for the King of the Mountains points. It's a Category 2 climb, so this climb across the top, 5 points for the winner. And Rafael Majka just having a little bit of a slip of the gears. It's Thomas Voeckler who collects maximum points. 3 points then for Rafael Majka, so he's now equal first place with Thomas de Gent. 90 points apiece in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. This is Jon Izagirre from Movistar. The Col de Sapel, they've managed to get across it.
You have to ask, is this just a show of strength by Thomas Voeckler, or does he really think he can win the King of the Mountain jersey if he starts now with a 90-point deficit?
For the King of the Mountains jersey. There was a big Direct Energy fan club on the side of the road.
And there was a camera.
This is Dylan Groenewegen at the back, the Dutch national champion. 11th on yesterday's stage. In his first Tour de France, he said he's just getting tired. It was as simple as that. He didn't make mistakes, he's just tired.
Just getting tired.
You're allowed
Normal.
to. Luke Rowe at the front. His crash a few days ago with Simon Gerrans.
Matt, we've had a retirement for the race just recently, and Jesus Herrada from the Movistar team, the Spaniard, he has abandoned the Tour de France, and his sport director from Movistar, Jose Luis Arrieta, he explained that Herrada retired because he had fever overnight. He managed to eat a little bit this morning, wasn't feeling good. Then he couldn't keep his food down and he wasn't able to continue the race. So it's part and parcel of the Tour de France. Sometimes your body just packs it in and doesn't let you do any more than you're trying to push it to do. And that's happening with Mark Cavendish's legs at the moment. Although he does say in general, I'm feeling good and I'm going to stay in the Tour till Paris. But a sprinter's legs, they'll argue on mountain stages.
Well, he's got 4 stage wins, and there's no arguing with Mark Cavendish being the fastest sprinter in this year's Tour de France and the fastest in history. He has won 30 stages now of the Tour. Just momentarily on Jesus Herrada from the Movistar team, that's a big loss to Nairo Quintana. He was a stage winner in an uphill finish at the Criterium de Dauphiné. So for Sky and Chris Froome, it's good news. Not that they want to hear it, but at least for them, well, that's one less rider from Movistar for Nairo Quintana to have support from.
Well, that's part of the battle of the Tour de France, staying healthy, being strong enough that your immune system is up to the task of the Tour de France. And that's what it comes down to. Sometimes you get a fever because you're struggling so badly with the effort and the recovery of the Tour de France.
And I think that was the case with Alberto Contador. The fever came on because of the injury and the extra fatigue that came with it. Daniel Teclahamanot, the Eritrean national Cummings with him. Peter Sagan, the leader in the race for the green jersey, aiming for 5 in a row. Extraordinary record. The record at the moment for green jerseys is Eric Zabel. He's got 6 wins in the battle for green.
When I spoke to Mark Cavendish last night on that bell, I asked him a question. I said, Cav, would you like to see, or do you think it would be fair if the green jersey competition was restructured a little bit, that the points across the competition were a little bit different, so it opens it up to the guy who's the best sprinter, because you are the best sprinter in this Tour? He said, no. Then it would just be an anti-Sagan jersey. He said, well, okay. In the end, he said, maybe a separate prize or a recognition. I said, I'm going to create my own best sprinter category of the Tour de France, and I'm going to award that myself. And I've already done it because Mark Cavendish will not be overhauled as best sprinter in this Tour. Just have to come up with some sort of trophy, or might make him a certificate. But he said, no, that's the way the green jersey competition is. He said, but I do think it's a bit over the top with so many points on offer at the intermediate sprints. He said, take those out and I'd be well in front.
And that's where Peter Sagan is really making his ground up, particularly on medium mountain stages. 3 riders in this leading group of 28 from IM Cycling. Every time we've seen this squad, yesterday they had Martin Alminger in the breakaway. We've spoken about the fact that since the sponsor said, unfortunately, the end of this season, it's all over, the team has stepped up to a whole new level. They've got 3 riders in the break, Steph Clement, Jerome Capel and Jalison Pantano. And Pantano, the Colombian, is a brilliant climber, and he was a stage winner at the Tour de Suisse this year, finishing in 4th position overall. He's a real threat from that leading group. For Dimension Data, they've won 5 stages so far. We're on stage 15. That's a third of the stage victories that go into Dimension Data. And he is sprinting here to collect some points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Not a lot of points on offer on this one. This is only a Category 3 climb, so just 2 points for the win. And smartly, Rafael Maica is choosing the economical approach. He's not wasting a sprint on one of the minor climbs. He'll be saving it for the big one, the Grand Colombier, which is outside categorization. And if he gets over the top of that one in first position, it'll be 20 points.
But Maica just nipping out of that chasing bunch in the background there to come over and pick up the 1 point. So he's only handed 1 point back to Serge Pol, so he's got a big lead on anyway, but doing the minimum required to get himself a point rather than go head-to-head in a sprint, possibly lose it and waste all that energy.
Over the top of the Col de Piers loop, and it was Serge Pauls collecting 2 points. 1 point to Rafael Micah, which now puts him in the lead in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey by that 1 point, ahead of Thomas de Gent, who's stranded back in the main peloton. Ethiopia's Gourmet running for the Lamprey team, sitting down at the back of this breakaway. Good to see him in the move, just 24 years of age. He knows what's required to get through a 3-week race. Last year, he finished 2 Grand Tours, Italy and Spain. So there's no question mark over his endurance. Giving a little bit of distance on the descent, though. Not taking the corners quite as quickly as some of the others. The finish today is in the town of Toulouse. They go over the Grand Colombier as the second last climb, and then the Lassettes to the Grand Colombier as the final climb, and it's down through to the finish line. In between those 2 climbs, they go across the finish line for the first time. We spoke before about how rare it is to have a circuit finish in the Tour de France. It happened a lot throughout the 70s and the 60s, but with the exception of the Champs-Élysées, the last time it has happened was back in 1998 in Dublin.
And I was there, I should have remembered. It was in Phoenix Park in Dublin.
And Cipollini was the winner.
No.
No?
Tom Steels.
Tom Steels
Eric
was the winner.
Zabel second. And then I was the next one.
Cipollini crashed on the way into the circuit.
I think he may have crashed on the backside of the circuit after we already got the bell. He had a couple of crashes that year, Chippo. But Tom Steels, he dominated that Tour de France in the sprints. He won 4 stages.
Just as we've seen this year for Mark Cavendish. Serge Pauls and Rafael Micah, as they went across the top of the previous climb, they have given it a little squirt. 3rd participation for Rafael Micah in the Tour de France. Best result last year, 28th overall. But more importantly, he's won 3 stages and he's won the King of the Mountains classification. He's been the winner of the Tour of Poland, which is running at the moment. Tim Wellens is leader, incidentally, of that race. But he was 3rd in the Volta a España last year, Rafael Micah, and 5th in the Giro d'Italia this year. The guy is among the best climbers in the world, and he's in a good position to pick up yet another stage victory for Tinkoff.
Well, I think more than the stage victory, he has his mind on the King of the Mountains jersey. He made it his own a couple of years ago when he won also a couple of stages. And pushing on with this attack with Serge Pauls. And I found it quite a strange time for 2 of the best climbers in the group to go on the attack on a 10-kilometre, slightly downhill valley, when you think it would be much easier to open their advantage on a climb.
They've gone for the element of surprise.
Taking a leaf out of the Chris Froome book.
Hasn't he been surprising? He has been. He's been fabulous. 1 kilometre to the intermediate sprint. This is Tom Dumoulin, along with the 2 riders from Movistar, which is Izagirre and Oliveira. And the pace is really starting to pick up within that group. The Chateau de Ongueville, which is just off in the distance. We might get a chance to look at that once they get through the intermediate sprint. 500 metres, there'll be no great contest amongst these 2, I wouldn't imagine. 20 points in the race for the green jersey. A 3-second time bonus, but that's insignificant. Rafael Micah, he looks to be very sociable. We saw him talking earlier with Ilnaz Zakarin, now having the conversation with Serge Pauls, negotiating what happens through this intermediate sprint.
And I think it would have been something to the effect of, you take the sprint.
I want the King of the Mountains. And that's exactly what is happening. But Serge Pauls also wants the King of the Mountains points, so no great agreement. Reichenbach, or is that Morabito trying to go across? I Am Cycling looking to close it down. So the move not creating a big gap, but it is increasing the pace from that group.
Well, I've seen them take 30 seconds in comparison to the peloton, who are also now strung out single file. This will be where Stannard and Rowe pick the pace up a little bit, try and, if they can, narrow that gap down. And normally, I think they would have narrowed the gap down somewhat, except for the attack of Maker and Pauls, which really inspired that group to really get working together, which they haven't done for quite a while. As a bit of ingenious farm art there, milking the cow and making the cheese.
And they make lots of cheese in this region. One of the key producers that they make in this part of the Jura. Ian Stannard still at the front with Luke Rowe. The longer they stay at the front, the better it is for Chris Froome.
Did you see the little hand signals from Stannard and Rowe? They came towards that corner. They get there, they can see what the corner's doing. They give a hand signal as if to say, tight left, a caution sign, if you like, to let Chris Froome know what it's like, what to watch out for, that there's a gutter on the side. So they're really thinking about every little detail there.
Like a co-pilot in a rally car. Left 4. And it is starting to string out at the back of the peloton. Things are getting a little tougher now. And you see with all the directional signals that you've got, and there's one on the right-hand side saying straight ahead. You spoke about this a couple of days ago. If it's a gentle turn, it's just 1 arrow. Sharp turn, there's 2. And when it's really sharp, there's whistles, there's gendarmes, and there's all sorts of alarm bells going off.
That's right, but it always helps to have your teammate on the ball, like Stannard and Rowe at the front, just pointing out little things, even pointing out so much as a dip in the road or a little pothole if there is one, which normally they drive the whole course. The organisation, they send out a couple of vans the day before the stage and also on the morning of the stage. They go over the whole course slowly and they check the road. And if there's any potholes, they fill them. They try and repair everything, so they leave nothing to chance and keep the riders as safe as possible and from having unforeseen mechanicals that could affect their race.
The riders from Katusha, Lusada and Zakharin.
And after what we saw happen to Zakharin in the Giro d'Italia with his descending, his, let's call it, lack of skill in going downhill, wasn't able to keep it on the road. I'm sure he and his team directors would like to see him build up a substantial gap by the top of the climb so he doesn't have to risk everything on the way down.
Steve Morabito at the front for FDJ. Speaking of crashes, our thoughts are with Edward Turns, who's just come out of surgery, according to his team, Trek Segafredo, and everything went well. So heal fast. Good luck, Edward Turns. We're looking forward to you coming back to the Tour de France next year because he's ridden well in his first attempt at it in 2016. He got the white jersey on the first stage.
A very good debut, a couple of top five finishes in the bunch sprints. So hopefully we see Edward Turns back quickly and back in the bunch sprints where he belongs.
Gorgeous sunny Sunday afternoon in the Jura. A family picnic on the side of the road as they watch the Tour de France work its way past. And now Serge Pals, almost at the top of the climb, stretches the legs, and Rafael Majka is shaking his head. He wants to maintain some consistent working within this group, but Serge Pals has got every right to try and pick up the points. But again, it's only a Category 3 climb, so there's just the 2 points up for grabs if he goes over the top in first position, which clearly he's going to do. Rafael Majka is waiting for the big one, which is still to come, and that's the next climb of the Grand Colombier. 2 points for Serge Pals, but the big climb of the day is about to come, and across the top of that one, there'll be 20 points up for grabs. So Serge Pals, he now moves up to around about 55 points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. And Rafael Majka is on 92. Some big ground to make up.
So he's attacking for the top of those climbs, but not really making a dent in the lead that Rafael Majka now has over him. And did Majka just ride to the front of that breakaway group to mop up the last point, or did he not bother?
Well, he would have been able to do so without spending any energy, so I imagine that he probably did.
This is La Forêt de Mazières that the peloton, or the breakaway, are riding through. There's the peloton riding through it now on the way to the top of the climb. A beautiful forest in the Jura.
and it's still Ian Stannard at the front. So Team Sky is showing no real concern for the breakaway. A reminder that the best place rider in that breakaway group is Sebastian Reichenbach at 11 minutes and 41 seconds down. The good news for Sebastian is he's now in the top 10 overall. Virtual top 10. Still a long way to go. Just inside 80 kilometres.
Of course, people of the Ain region must excuse me. We're not in the Jura. We're in the region L'Ain, just to the south of Jura. Beautiful region nonetheless.
Having won the prologue of the event, now he's absolutely on a high in this year's Tour de France. Yes, he's lost too much time to challenge for the podium, we think, in Paris. But now let's have a spin around. Maybe we can see. I think Vincenzo Nibali, and there he is. He's trying to cross the gap. Put those two together, Paul, and I'll agree with everybody. We're never going to be seen again today.
Well, if those two get together at the head of affairs this afternoon, it's job done. Still caught in the middle, Phil. Sadly for him, in no man's land is Dylan van Baarle of Team Cannondale Drapac, but there is Nibali, and he looks very comfortable. His goal at the Tour de France this year, he said he made no bones about it before the start of the Tour. I'm out here searching for stage victories. Now, if he wants one this afternoon, I mean, I just highlighted two names of the riders in that leading group, Nibali and Tom Dumoulin. If they make the junction at the front, they'll be very, very difficult, these two guys, to catch.
Overall, Tom Dumoulin is nearly an hour behind, so he's not looking to win the Tour, he's looking to win the stage. As they break away here, still 28 strong, 27 strong. They haven't caught Van Baarle just yet, but some serious contenders have left them behind on this climb now. As Nibali's gone straight past Dylan van Baarle.
There in the distance, you can just see the white jersey going into the shade of Tom Dumoulin. And of course, having won the Giro d'Italia this year, Vincenzo Nibali will know just how good Tom Dumoulin has become over the last number of years, which is why he's probably the only rider in that group of 30 riders that Vincenzo Nibali wanted to be with. And now that's why he's trying so hard on this climb. And by the way, we're not actually yet on the categorized climb of the day, because that comes in about 10 kilometers time. That's when we start the Grand Colombier, and I think Vincenzo Nibali, he wants to make the junction, Phil, before we get to that point.
Yeah, this is why they've talked about this being such a hard stage. Even there are a number of roads here which don't have categories for the King of the Mountains, yet they're well worthy of second category climbs.
Well, that obviously says Auton, which is the region we're in right now, and they are putting a love sign up there for Nice, because let's not forget we're still in 3 days of mourning in France for the tragedy that happened in Nice a couple of nights ago on the 14th of July. And in fact, Phil, a number of the French riders are still wearing black bands around their shoulder, around their sleeves at the start of the stage.
7:20, about the biggest we've had. Back to the main pack. And now if Nibali, he's got his tempo going. This is not an official climb at all. We are just about 7.5 kilometers from the official start of the giant Col de la Combière, which is a 12.8 kilometer climb.
Well, I think
there we are.
officially,
What did you say? 8.2. Is that what I said?
I think you're pretty close to that, Phil. That's about 5 miles of racing. Vincenzo Nibali has seen this as the moment to try and get across, but look at the reaction coming behind, because they're not giving free tickets out this afternoon, and they're all trying to nail back Vincenzo Nibali, but he is looking after the man in front, Dumoulin. And then once they go over the top of this unmarked climb, shall we call it, uncategorized climb in Auton, then they will have a rapid little descent of 4 or 5 kilometers, around about 3 miles downhill into the valley, and then that's when they'll start the big climb of the day in earnest. And they're still holding on to a gap of around about 7 minutes over the main field. And again, in that main field, we'll start to see a general warming up, a general speeding up, as the main contenders want to place themselves at the front end of the main field for this big final climb. Well, it's not the final climb, the final climb of the day that we'll do on 2 occasions. All right, coming across there now. The leader of the race is Tom Dumoulin. He got into that break. He was the only rider from his team to get into that leading group, by the way, and he was very much in a solitary situation. Vincenzo Nibali, on the other hand, he had a teammate in there, Kangert. So now as we start to see coming across, the next rider to come across is one of the riders from IM Cycling. A little bit further back, there's also just trying to get onto the back there, one of the riders from AG Tuara's seen this as a really good move to try and get himself into contention. But now we're over the top of this uncategorized climb now with Tom Dumoulin. Good chance to see that, and having a quick look down there, he's in the largest gear that he can get himself into. And now Nibali's been joined in the second position on the road by a couple of other riders. As we look a little bit further down the road there, you get a chance now to see that is the main field, still under control, under the pilotage of Team Sky. Froome sitting right at the back of that long line of riders there, his teammates all the way up alongside him. But they'll know. Well, Dumoulin has got 20 seconds advantage over the group of Vincenzo Nibali.
Sad exit for him from that race last year when he had a pretty bad crash. Not 3 days into the race, but they're now leading the charge here now. Pantano at the front there, it's his first tour as well.
They're actually closing in on him, because the last time check I got over race radio was it was down to 18 seconds for the three chasers. So if they do make the junction, we will then have a very solid leading group of 4 riders.
Just over 2 kilometers to the official start of the Grand Colombier, and they've got him in the distance now. They're closing in on him. They're going to hit him just as the climb starts.
Well, in fact, I'm not sure that they're closing in on him. I think he's, in fact, waiting for them to make the junction. I think he sees this as a good opportunity, because, after all, there's still a good 62 kilometers to go to the finish. And that's why I think he's sat up and waited. He realizes he needs some assistance over this next climb of the day. Look at Vincenzo Nibali just looking over his shoulder. He's calling Pantano to come forward. And Pantano, by the way, rode an excellent Tour of Switzerland. They finished in 4th place overall and won himself a stage. That was the big stage race. 2 stage races rarely used as preparation for the Tour de France, the Criterium de Dauphiné, which most of the big contenders used, and the Tour of Switzerland. And Pantano, the rider in the middle there, a 27-year-old Colombian, is an excellent climber, and it looks like a pretty good descender there as he goes up through the inside. He also, back in 2010, finished at 3rd overall in the Tour de l'Avenir, which is, although a race for the developing riders, it is always an indicator that if you can win that race or finish on the podium, it gives you an indication of the ability to ride well in the Tour de France. So Dumoulin just sitting on the back there, just recovering a fraction. He's had a great race so far. Very, very dominant in the individual time trial a couple of days ago, and in fact in the middle section of that individual time trial he rode at approximately 57 kilometers an hour average speed. Yes, I know that was because he had a cross tailwind, which was very helpful, but you try riding at in excess of 30 miles an hour for about 20 miles, and that is what Tom Dumoulin was able to do. He now makes himself the #1 favorite to win the gold medal in the individual time trial in Rio de Janeiro, just about 2 weeks after the end of the Tour de France. His other challenge, though, will come from the man who currently leads this race overall, Chris Froome, who got a medal in the individual time trial in London. He finished in 3rd position to get himself a bronze, and he said that was probably one of the proudest moments of his career, to climb up there in 3rd position behind Bradley Wiggins, who that year won the Tour de France and the Olympic gold medal in the individual time trial. So just waiting to get a bit of confirmation. They've got 14 seconds advantage over the chasers, which is not very much. There's the left-hand bend, and there is the start of the climb at 12.8 kilometers. And the information on this climb is it's 12.8 kilometers long. That's about 8 miles. It's an average gradient of just inside of 7%, and this is the remnants of the breakaway group of 30 riders, and they're not too far behind there. 12 kilometers to the top for them. I think everybody in the group behind is expecting attacks to come from Team Movistar, but for the moment, advantage goes to Team Sky. They've had the majority of their riders in that group, although Luke Rowe and the other big strong man from that group, Ian Stannard, they had a little bit of a difficult time on the first climb of the day, which was attacked very aggressively. They recovered over the top, and since then they've done the job that they've done so many times over the first couple of weeks of this Tour de France. They've set the tempo. They realize, though, that by the time they get to the 60-kilometre to go point, that's when their job is pretty much done, because that's when we'll start to turn up towards the high spot of today's stage, 1,500 metres, but more importantly, it is a drastically hard climb, and on the other side it's a very tricky descent, and the riders will go through the finishing town of Coulouse, and then they'll go out again for a 23-kilometre loop with another ascent from a different side of the Grand Colombier up to the Lacet du Grand Colombier. And if we get the shots that we've had in the past of that climb, and it is a beautiful clear blue sky today. In fact, every time we pull back, we can see the Alps in the background beckoning the Tour de France, and we've seen great images of Mont Blanc. So Nibali there, as you can see, is really starting to wind it up there. He's looking for a little bit of a gap if he can, but I think the better part of valor here really would be to stay together. We've got 4 solid climbers who will collaborate on the early slopes of this climb. Pantano had a great Tour of Switzerland with a stage victory. Tom Dumoulin, well, he really is showing, Phil, that he's a lot more than an individual time trialist. And Vincenzo Nibali, well, as the French would say, he's got fourmis dans les jambes. He's got ants in his legs. He is itching to get himself into an attacking position.
Tour de France.
Yeah, but we really are reducing the leading group of 30 quite dramatically, and Rafael Majka again has seen this as a big opportunity. And after all, Phil, this is an outside categorized climber. There are 25 points for the first man to go over the top on a day like this, and he's not only thinking now about points in the King of the Mountains competition, I think he's actually starting to dream about the possibility of a stage win.
Well, I'm hearing all the sprinters are being dispatched out of the main field. Tom Dumoulin in this breakaway made a determined move. He's still joined by Nibali, but the wrong way now. They're going away from the lead group together.
Well, I mean,
this is Haimar Zubeldia, one of the third oldest man in the race too, vastly experienced. He's losing ground, 69.
Well, I have to say, Phil, that is a bit of a shocker to me. They made the right move. Tactically, they knew when they needed to make the move, but they've just not been able to follow up. It's still 8.5 minutes, and it's still all of this pacemaking being done by Sky. It looked very much there as we took a quick glimpse back to the main field, as if Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard were starting to disappear. And that's not really a surprise. They've done an awful lot of work over the undulating part of the course, but now we're getting into some serious mountain climbing. Just John Degenkolb going back there, Phil. I think everybody very happy with the ride in the sprint yesterday by Degenkolb, coming back from an awful injury at the start of the year. Vincenzo Nibali now on the defensive. He's at 40 seconds from the leading group, which has come down to around about 7